Real quick, let's take a look at your traffic on the way in on this Thursday morning. Not a whole lot going on out there on the roadway. Do have one accident to report, that at North Brickyard Road and Sloan Road. Today, it's going to be a high of 73 with plenty of sunshine. It's traffic and weather on the air of the game. And welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Belcher along with you. I'm here in the Herndon Chevrolet studios. Jack Belcher joining me on the Love Chevrolet phone lines for what's going to be a very busy day that starts things off, Jack, with you guys being back out at spring practice once again, expecting, once again, 9:43, I believe, is when we're getting things rolling again. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's right, Tyler. And, the times are so specific. And, I was telling you yesterday, the last time I went, they had started practice earlier than expected. And it's like a whole process where, you got to go through a gate and stuff. And, just trying to get there a little bit earlier this time around. But, yeah, man, 9:43 today is the approximate time. So 42 minutes to go.
So looking forward to seeing what will come out of that. And we'll get into some of the stuff that the players said in a couple minutes. We're over a week into spring practice now, and really not a whole lot come out of it. I know we've heard from, obviously, the assistants, some more players yesterday. Coach Beamer spoke before spring practice. But in terms of, headlines, besides Vakari Swain and his academic issue, really nothing to speak of as of right now.
Yeah, nothing too crazy so far. And I think that's also just because it's been only 3 practices so far. And, now they're just starting to get into full pads, which should probably ramp things up a little bit. But again, it's spring ball. I mean, we're still in the very early stages of it. So we still got, 3.5 weeks to go of this. And a lot will change between now and then. And, I think we're going to learn a lot about this team by the end of it, just because there's so much that we still don't know about what this team is going to look like by the time we get to August.
We'll, again, kind of get into some of the stuff the players said coming up here in a couple minutes, but it is a big day for baseball on a lot of different fronts. We'll dive into that in just a second, but we got to kick things off with our 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped. Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm. Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurting in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. Of course, Jack, big baseball series this upcoming weekend over at Founders Park. The number 1 team in the nation and defending national champion Tennessee Volunteers coming into town for a series that South Carolina desperately needs to win to get themselves back on track. We ran a poll yesterday on our 107.5 The Game Twitter page, and there's still a couple hours left if you want to go vote for it yourself. The question was, what's your level of hope for the Gamecocks baseball team right now? Your options are long season, still time, concerned, mashing the panic button, and checked out. Checked out is actually winning as of right now with 37%, concerned in second with 32%, and then mashing the panic button at 22% in third.
Well, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, no offense, Gamecock fans, but a lot of you guys really just don't have much faith in this team, and I understand. Everyone's so used to seeing South Carolina recently kind of just struggle. it was like that for a little bit under Mark Kingston. There were some down years in there, and especially after last year when everyone was ready to have him be fired and stuff. And then, they got their wish, and now it's, it hasn't really gone super well so far. But I don't think this team is dead in the water yet, right? They still have hope. There is literally half the season left to go in the regular season, and that's not even counting tournament play and the postseason. So, look, it's very early. We're only 2 SEC series in. I know Tennessee is this big, bad, dominant foe coming into town, but trust me, if you get swept this weekend, it's a different conversation. But if you can win a game, maybe even do what feels like the impossible and win a series here, you're right back on track, and you got a lot of series left to go.
Yeah, again, it's easier said than done taking down the number 1 team. You do get the game at home, which is a bit of a lucky draw there. And, if you can find a way to win 2 out of 3 this weekend, you set yourself up a whole lot better going forward because you got more tough tests coming both here at Founders Park and on the road here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, now, again, I think this is really the toughest part of the schedule just because you're never going to be facing 2 top teams in the country in back-to-back weekends. And I think that's what also people forget is that South Carolina's schedule by no means has been easy. Like, all of their series that they've lost at this point have come against top 10 teams in the country. Clemson, you got swept. I think they were, number 6 or 7 in the country. Oklahoma's top 10. They're very good, and you should have won that series. And then, obviously, Arkansas is just a powerhouse right now. So, look, Tennessee is going to be really tough this weekend, but find a way to come out of there with a competitive series, and you won't win over the fan base, but it'll definitely instill confidence that, hey, you can go out there and maybe play pretty well against some of these tougher teams.
It is. We'll hear from Coach Maneri coming up tonight on Carolina Calls at 6 o'clock. Get his thoughts previewing that series against Tennessee coming up this weekend. We'll talk more about that coming up tomorrow. But a huge day on all fronts for baseball. It is MLB opening day as we get the 2025 Major League Baseball season rolling. It's kind of weird because it feels like it comes out of nowhere, right? I know we had the Dodgers and the Cubs playing in Japan last week, but compared to like the start of the NFL season or the start of college football or even the start of, college basketball, I feel like Major League Baseball's opening day just almost kind of like comes out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, that's right, it's opening day.
And it's so early this year. I know it's always early, but March 27th, I can't remember the last time Major League Baseball had an opening day this early because it's usually March 30th or April 1st or whatever. Heck, even in some years, it's like April 7th. So, look, I'm always happy that baseball is here. Spring training felt like it went by so quickly, and it honestly did. And now we're here, and, the sprint towards the World Series really begins. And, yeah, I know the Dodgers and Cubs played in Japan last week, but honestly, that never really feels like true opening day until you see today it's all 28 teams because the Rays and Rockies play tomorrow for opening day. But really looking forward to this season, and it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and things get rolling with your Yankees, starting things off with the Brewers. That game will be at 3 o'clock and nationally televised on ESPN. Of course, all games going to be available in their local regional networks. And then you have the Dodgers and Detroit tonight at 7 o'clock for the nightcap there on ESPN. But, of course, the local things, Braves taking on the Padres this afternoon at 4:10 out in San Diego. And like you said, it's not necessarily a sprint, but it kind of feels that way sometimes for the longest sports season out of all of them. And, feels like you blink and boom, we're in October.
No, totally does. It is going to seriously fly by. And that's why opening day is always so special just because, it has really big meaning for a lot of teams. Look at the Cincinnati Reds, for example. They always – I literally saw a video on Twitter 5 minutes before you called. And, they've had opening day as a tradition for more than 150 years. And there's really nothing like it, quite honestly. And I'm sure the weather in New York today will be good. I know in San Diego it'll probably be nice. So really looking forward to watching. And I know both of our teams are going to be well in contention for not just the postseason, but a chance to go to the World Series. And it really is going to be one of those years, I think, that, obviously the Dodgers are head and shoulders probably above everyone because they spend more money than most. But I really do think this could be a year where we just get one of those random World Series matchups that maybe not everyone expects.
Well, speaking of which, the FanDuel Sportsbook odds for World Series winner this year, no surprise, Dodgers with their high payroll and obviously coming off the World Series win last year, leading the way. The Braves actually second at plus 850, Yankees in third at plus 900, Phillies in fourth at plus 1,000, Mets in fifth at plus 1,100, and then the Baltimore Orioles in sixth at plus 1,600. So again, kind of the usual suspects you expect. And again, baseball is one of those sports when you can kind of look at what teams are spending and kind of figure out who the contenders are going to be, and those are all among the teams that are kind of listed at the top there.
The thing you mentioned there, I mean, look at it back real quick. I mean, 4 of the top 6 teams that you mentioned there, all from the National League. And, for as much as I loved seeing the Yankees get to the World Series last year, I mean, let's face the facts. They had a much easier path than, say the Dodgers did in the National League. The AL is just not as good as maybe as it once was. I think, how are the Rangers going to be this year? I mean, they were in the World Series and won it all 2 years ago. What are the Tigers going to do this year? What are the Guardians and Orioles going to do? I mean, those were teams that, went pretty early out in the postseason. I mean, the Guardians got, dropped in 5 games in the ALCS. The NL is just so hard to predict, man, because it's like every team is really good, especially in the NL East when, the Phillies are really good. The Braves are good. The Mets, the Dodgers spend a lot of money, but the Mets just dropped $760 million on Juan Soto. So it's very hard to predict who's going to come out of the NL. But I feel like with the AL, even with all the losses that the Yankees have had, I just feel like they're probably still the best team in that, not just the division, but probably in that side of the league. And we'll see what happens. There's always teams that make a run, like the Royals were very good last year. But I definitely could see a possibility where the Yankees get back to the World Series, especially if they get relatively healthy here soon. But the NL, I mean, most people are probably going to say the Dodgers, but it would not shock me at all if we see the Braves or Phillies or Padres or even the Mets with how much they've spent getting to the Fall Classic.
Well, you're going to have to go through the Dodgers in the NL to win it. Not saying that it's impossible for a Braves or Padres or whatever, but again, the Dodgers are kind of the standard in the National League for a reason now because of the talent they have, because of the money that they spend, and you're going to have to go through L.A. to get anywhere in the postseason, it seems like.
No, most definitely. Like, very, very rarely now do you see the Dodgers, obviously they've always fallen short in most cases before last year and then obviously the COVID year in 2020. But outside of that, the Dodgers have always seemingly come up short for one reason or another, despite how much talent they have. But, I mean, this team is, as long as they stay healthy, they're going to be fine. Like, they are loaded, and they've added more guys, obviously. They have basically a Japanese farmhouse at this point, with just getting different guys in and whatnot. So, really tough squad, but I feel like, it's such a long year. It's tough to predict. There's always going to be a chance in that side of the league with the Braves and Padres and Phillies and Mets. I mean, those are really good teams that we're talking about right there.
A quick thing now, the spring training, has officially wrapped up, where this year they had the automatic balls and strikes challenge system in place just through spring training, not going to be in the regular season this year. But Major League Baseball teams won 52.2% of their ball strike challenges during the spring training test of robot umpires. That's per ESPN. Look, I imagine it's going to be implemented by 2026. I still think the umpires union is going to have a problem with this, but again, it seems to be serving its purpose through the limited availability that it had in the spring.
It's definitely going to strike a nerve with the umpires, no doubt about it. It should force them to do their jobs better. That's also going to be the case. And I do think it's definitely going to happen, that we're going to see the automated balls and strike system next year. But I think it's probably good for baseball just because there's so many times where umpires get things wrong, and there's nothing that can be done about it, right? And we made the move about 10, 15 years ago when the review system came into play on challenges. That was needed for so long now, honestly, and we got that. And no one has a problem with it now. Let's do the same with the balls and strikes. If it moves the game along, it might take a few seconds, but if it gets the right calls out there, I'm totally down with it.
Yep, and again, not for this regular season, but I imagine it's probably going to be coming for 2026. Again, Jack's on his way out to spring practice for the second availability for media. We will dive into some of what players had to say yesterday coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Thursday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's our head, along with you here in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Jack Veltri on Left Chevrolet phone lines, getting set for the second media availability for spring practice for South Carolina coming up here in about 20 minutes or so. As, again, we're trying to learn a little bit more about this team compared to where we were last week. As, again, as you and I have talked about many times, Jack, there's so many questions, so many spots. They're wide open competition-wise, and kind of figuring out what this team's going to look like before things kick off in, I want to say 157 days, if I'm thinking off the top of my head correctly, against Virginia Tech.
Yeah, we've still got, shoot. It's going to fly by the time we get that close here. But, yeah, man, it's still got a ways to go. Still got a few months here. But, again, spring football, to some extent, passes the time. Even though we really haven't heard too much so far out of practice. But, hey, today's going to be good seeing the guys in action. Last week, you never want to say that, that we learned nothing from spring practice. But, again, for being day one, we didn't really see, them go into 11-on-11 or anything. You hope maybe we'll get to see something like that today, some semblance of that. But, again, for probably the 3-4 periods that were there today, it's probably going to be still a lot of individual work, and they'll be in full pads today too, I would imagine, like they have been. So that'll be a nice change of pace, and should probably add a little bit more flair to what we see.
Of course, one area that we're watching closely this entire offseason is what's happening on the offensive line. A couple of offensive linemen speaking to the media yesterday, and Tree Babalade and Trevon Ball. Hear a little bit of what they had to say real quick here. First, you're going to hear Tree talking about learning to play at the guard position. Then you're going to hear Trevon Ball talking about what he learned from dropping down on the depth chart last season.
Going guard, it was good. It's kind of fun. It's happened way faster at tackle. At guard, but I just gotta get faster.
Really just learning experience. God has a plan for everything. So that's just the way I took it. I was able to learn from some great guys last year. So I just took it day by day and just kept learning.
And Jack, these two guys are interesting because we've grouped them together really during their entire time here at South Carolina. They come in as true freshmen back in 2023. Both those kind of thrust into starting roles pretty quickly because of the injuries on the offensive line. And they had their ups and downs you would expect freshmen to have playing in the SEC. And then last year, both those guys struggled to get on the field. Now, Tree was somebody that was limited a lot more, and we did have questions about, was he hurt? Was it an eligibility thing? What's going on? Trevon Ball played a lot on special teams, but as far as actual reps on the offensive line and offense, not a whole lot. So both those guys kind of took a step back last year. What does that mean for them? What kind of what kind of effect can they have possibly in year 3? We'll have to see.
Well, yeah, I definitely do think that it was always strange to me last year that they had pretty good seasons as freshmen. Trevon Ball was all SEC as a freshman, and he just didn't get, neither of them got the same run that they did as freshmen. And you look at this year, they're definitely going to be counted on a ton on the offensive line, and I think there is an opportunity for them with the two guard spots specifically. You lose both of your starters from last year, then even Vershawn Lee at center. I know Tro's been working a little bit at center, is what he was saying yesterday. So there is opportunity there for them, and I definitely do think they're going to be counted on quite heavily this year.
Yeah, and you heard Tree Babalade talk about it there a little bit. He's also working on the inside of moving to guard as well. And again, he played left tackle as a true freshman, which is obviously not easy. Josiah Thompson comes in and takes that job a year ago. But, he's somebody that hopefully his versatility can allow him to move in to the inside where, again, things are kind of wide open right now. We kind of think that Boaz Stanley is a leading candidate for center, but all these jobs, with the exception of probably left tackle, seem to be wide open right now.
Yeah, it definitely does seem to be wide open. I think Josiah Thompson is your starter at left tackle, no doubt. And then left guard, it does feel like it's Tree's opportunity to earn a starting job and be on that left side. Can you imagine Tree and Josiah being next to each other on the left side of the line? That would be really, really hard to stop, I think.
Sure.
And then on the right side, I think Boaz Stanley, I think you're right. I think he's definitely going to be starting at center. South Carolina seems to really like what they have with him there. But also, on the right side, is Casey Henry a lock? I mean, he was the starter last year. He, probably was going to be the starter before he got hurt 2 years ago. I mean, is he a guaranteed lock? Because I don't think he had a great year last year. Had some moments, but I still think that competition should be open at right tackle. And then right guard, again, very much like Tree, I feel like Tro has got a great opportunity to earn that guard spot at right guard. But, again, we still have so much season in the spring left to go. And even after the spring ends, I don't think any real competition is going to be over just because there's still an entire fall to go where things can definitely change.
Real quick here, since we're talking about the offensive line, here's Josiah Thompson here talking about his progression from last year.
That year?
I'll say it's a lot more easier. Just knowing what to expect, from last year, for me, my first year. Just spring ball practice, spring ball, time of the year. So I'm just more prepared this year.
So we obviously know he had his ups and downs and his struggles a season ago. And again, playing left tackle, that's the hardest position on the football field in a lot of people's opinions. So you expected there was going to be some growing pains. And we kind of look at a guy like Caden Proctor at Alabama as kind of the blueprint for what you hope Josiah Thompson's going to be. Caden Proctor had a lot of struggles in his freshman year. Back in 2023, ended up being one of the better offensive linemen in the SEC a season ago. And when you look at kind of the numbers, and I'm looking at Pro Football Focus here, Caden Proctor really kind of figured it out towards the back end of his freshman year, where in the last 6 games, that included, ESC championship and playoff game against Michigan, only surrendered 3 total sacks during that time after surrendering, a total of 6 sacks during the first 8 games of the season that year. And then for Josiah Thompson, in his last 6 games, surrendered 1 sack last year after surrendering 5 through the first 6 games of last season. So again, you're kind of seeing the numbers bear out that he started to figure it out more as the season went along and put up some of his best pass blocking numbers at the very end of the season against teams like Clemson and even against Illinois in the bowl game. So you hope that translates over into starting this year that much farther ahead.
Yeah, he definitely progressed as last year went on. Honestly, you could say the same thing about the entire offensive line. I feel like a lot of that had to do with the fact that there was continuity, right? Because in 2023, injuries and other things kind of led to so many changes on the line to where it felt like you had a different lineup combination every single game. And last year, you had to work through the kinks of a slow start, a lot of sacks, and pressures being given up. But by the time you got towards midseason, you saw a group that kind of morphed together. And a lot of that did have to do with what Josiah Thompson did on the left side there. And that's what I would hope to expect this year, is that they find their best 5 and then they kind of roll with it moving forward. I think having that continuity could really do wonders for them.
All right, Jack, we're about to let you go get out to practice here in just a moment. What are you looking for or hoping to see today?
I would like to see a little bit more action in terms of seeing what maybe a starting group looks like. I don't know if that's wishful thinking or whatever, but a little bit of 7-on-7, 11-on-11, just something to kind of, give us a chance to leave with like, okay, we really did see a lot today. But also, I just want to see the guys continue to work. I want to see the quarterbacks throwing a little bit, receivers, how they're looking, just a lot of different things.
Get a good old depth chart drill, as Wes Mitchell likes to talk about, right?
Yes, definitely.
Right. Well, we'll be following along on the Insiders Forum on GamecockCentral.com, and hopefully we'll have some good stuff to talk about tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'll see you then. Thanks so much.
All right, again, Jack heading out to spring practice. Again, that gets rolling in about 15 minutes, and we'll get Wes and Chris's thoughts when they come in here at 11 o'clock on what they go out there and see as well. It is the Extra Point Tire Head along with you here on your Thursday. We'll get some more player sound coming up next as we continue to break down what's happening at spring practice. Coming up next as the Extra Point rolls along here on your Thursday on the Game. Tyler Ed once again telling you about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. As I say all the time, but I'm happy to remind you, you need to be on the lookout for odd things happening around your home. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors and windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you notice any of these problems with your home, you could have serious foundation issues. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantyconvicted.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your issues and get your foundation fixed right so you and your family can live without worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantyconvicted.com and put your home in the trusted hands of the professionals over at Canty Foundation Specialist.
I say just reading the keys of the tackles, like, looking at these steps or like who they're looking at, because if they're looking down, then I know that they're going down, not coming to me. They looking to me, obviously they coming to me. Based on like tight end alignment, just stuff like that would just give me a step quicker than everybody else and just make a play. So stuff like that just made me one step better ahead of my game.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyrant along with you here on your Thursday on the game. That was voice of Gamecock Edge Brian Thomas Jr. talking to me yesterday about some of the things that he's fine-tuning in this offseason, trying to make himself a better pass rusher for the 2025 season. And, of course, the Edge room, like every other room on this team, we have questions about. Maybe less questions because you know one side of your line is pretty darn secure with Dylan Stewart coming off of a phenomenal freshman season where the expectations for him are going to be even higher. He's on the cover of, or going to be one of the athletes on the cover of CFB 26, and he's on All-American list and all those kind of things that people are expecting big things out of him. But our question here locally is, okay, what's going to happen on the other side? Because last year you had Dylan Stewart on one side, and then you had Kyle Kennard on the other side, and both those guys ate and had plenty of production. Obviously, Kyle Kennard was an Nagurski Award. He's going to be upper mid-round draft pick, which he wasn't thought of coming into his time here at South Carolina. So obviously, and Dylan Stewart, if you were able to draft guys right now as a second-year player, there's probably a lot of NFL teams that'll probably take him pretty high because of what his upside potential is and all those kind of things. But the question becomes, what happens on the other side of the line? Can you find that complement to Dylan Stewart that Kyle Kennard was a season ago, to where offenses are having to say, okay, we're either going to double Dylan Stewart or we're going to double this other guy and allow Dylan Stewart to run free at us, or run with less obstacles in the way, I guess is the best way to put it. And you have guys on the roster, obviously in the room, but who can step up and be that guy akin to what a Kyle Kennard is? And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go out there and put up the exact same numbers, but somebody that can have that same kind of effect on the game, so to speak. And it kind of gets lost in the shuffle because of how good Kennard and Dylan Stewart were a year ago, but Brian Thomas Jr. put up respectable numbers. He had 4.5 sacks last year himself. Put up about the same amount of total tackles a year ago as Stewart and Kennard. So he was having a good effect on the game when he got out there. He just wasn't out there on the field nearly as much as those two guys were because, again, they were your two main pass rushers. But he was somebody that rotated in and put up respectable numbers. In fact, when you kind of break it down between number of snaps and total sacks, Brian Thomas Jr. had 1 sack for every 70 snaps that he played defensively. Dylan Stewart had 1 sack for every 83 snaps he played defensively. Kyle Kennard, just because his numbers are so crazy, had 1 sack for every 48 snaps he took defensively. And again, that's not a perfect way to measure success on defense, but it is kind of shows you that Brian Thomas Jr. kind of somewhere in between where those two guys were in terms of what he can go out there and do on the field. And again, he probably leads the way in terms of being that second guy. Now, again, he still has to go out there and earn it. It's not going to be given to him. And as we know, this coaching staff loves to talk about every spot as an open competition. But I imagine he's probably maybe an early leader to go out there and be that guy. You can't forget, last year for the season opener, JT Gear was listed as the other starting edge opposite of Kyle Kennard. And again, he rotated in last year as well, but didn't end up bearing out to somebody that was named a day one starter necessarily. We look at Desmond Umeozulu, somebody that's been on campus for now 3 years. Okay, is it gonna happen? You gonna pop? Well, what's gonna happen here? Jaylen Brown coming in from the portal, a highly touted guy from his time at Missouri, coming in out of high school. What can he do? Again, you've got a lot of questions in this room, like every other one, and it may not be. And this goes back to something that I believe it was Clinton White talked about the other day, to where you're not necessarily replacing one player with another player. It's going to be the same thing with maybe like Nicky Minori at safety too, but you're replacing the production with multiple guys. So while Brian Thomas Jr. may not go out there and get 11.5 sacks like Kyle Kennard did a season ago, if you can have him, if you can have, again, let's just say Gear and Umeozulu, all three of those guys combined for, let's say 12 sacks, right? Then you've replaced the production of Kyle Kennard with multiple guys rotating in there. That'd be fine too. Again, you just need to have an effect on both sides, because the problem that you have, if you have one dominant pass rusher and a bunch of other just slubs that can't have an effect on the quarterback, well, guess what? They're just going to focus on the one guy that is the threat, and not really worry about the other side because they know they can't get you anyway. So, again, you got to have heat coming off both sides, and hopefully Brian Thomas Jr. can kind of be the guy leading the charge for that for us, South Carolina. And, again, we'll see what Wes and Chris and Jack and everybody can learn when it comes to seeing practice number 2 today. And as we talked about with this defense the entire time last year, good pass rush helps out everybody else, right? Because when you're a DB in coverage, when you're not having to cover for a long period of time because the quarterback is either getting hit or being put out under enough pressure to throw the ball away, that helps you out. Because covering receivers is hard. Being a DB is one of the, if not the toughest jobs on the entire football field because you're trying to detract someone that's zigging, zagging, going left, right, up, down, 3 ways and sideways, right? And when you have a pass rush that is getting to quarterbacks and putting heat on them fast to where they're having to get the ball out quick and you're not having to cover for a long period of time, that makes you better. And same thing with linebackers. You know what I mean? To where you're not allowing things to progress down the field as much. And those guys can go up and make tackles or whatever it may be on short throws and those kind of things. Helps you out, makes your job a whole lot easier. So you hope the pass rush can be similar, can be just as good as it was a season ago for South Carolina. And the sack numbers in total is really kind of staggering when you go back and look at it because South Carolina's routinely been at the bottom of the SEC when it comes to total sacks over the years since the end of the Clowney era and all that kind of stuff. They've not been a consistent pass rush team. Last year was a different story, different step in the right direction, right? And is it okay? Is it now going to be the norm? Or is that a one-year anomaly just because you had 2 really good guys playing on opposite sides of the defensive line from each other? I go back to, again, I'm a Falcons fan, and like Vic Beasley was such an interesting case with the Falcons. First-round draft pick in 2015, didn't have a overall great rookie year, and then exploded in year number 2 and led league in sacks, and then went back to being just what we called Vic Busley in 2017 and onward. And now he's out of league. In that 2016 year where they made the Super Bowl, Dwight Freeney was on the other side. Dwight Freeney took a lot of attention away from Vic Beasley, allowing him to go out there and be productive. Again, when you have threats coming off the both sides, you have to pick one or the other. There's only 11 guys on offense. You can only put so many guys to deflect your pass rushers. And we saw that a season ago. And even when, Dylan Stewart was getting doubled, he was still tearing through some of those guys and still affecting quarterbacks like against Alabama with Jalen Milroe. So, again, if you can focus that attention on Dylan Stewart and freeze up the guys coming from the other side, you can still get both productions on both sides. But again, you got to hope somebody's going to be able to step up or a collection of guys are going to be able to replace that production and that threat that Cal Kennard posed on the other side of the line of scrimmage, and we'll see what happens with that. Again, you're not really going to know till season gets here. We're going to hear from Clayton White and defensive assistants and all this kind of thing saying, it looks great, We need to see when the season rolls around. We need to see production on the field, the sacks, the pressures, the hits, the hurries, all this kind of things to confirm whatever they end up saying about that edge room. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, tomorrow we're going to be out at Chartwood Golf Club in West Columbia for the 107.5 The Game Spring Golf Classic. This year we are partnering with the Lexington County Gamecock Club. Again, unfortunately, all the spots are filled up, but if you are signed up, you'll come hang out with us with Par 5 Golf Ball Cannon. Going to be giving away a pair of season tickets for baseball and football, 2 lucky winners, and also Basketball Hall of Famer and former Gamecock great Alex English going to be hanging out there as well. Special thanks to Hardee's for providing breakfast and Firehouse Subs for lunch, too. So, again, going to be a great time. Hopefully look forward to seeing all of you out there tomorrow morning and afternoon for the 107.5 The Game Spring Golf Classic. We'll come back and wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point today. A controversial broadcaster, to many, has announced his retirement. How do you feel about Gary Danielson? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Thursday here in the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head flying solo with the next couple minutes here as Jack's out observing spring practice media availability number 2. By the way, coming up in the 10 o'clock hour for the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating, Chris Clark sitting down with a couple of other transfers, one being Nick Sharp, transferring in on the offensive line, and 2 being Brady Hunt, who transferred in a year ago and is entering year number 2 at South Carolina, playing the tight end spot. So we hear those conversations coming up here in just a couple minutes at 10 o'clock for the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. What are your thoughts on Gary Danielson? Did you hate him like a lot of people did when he was covering the SEC? Well, if so, you're in luck because he's calling it a career at the end of this year.
I've been thinking about it for a while. The run has been so long. I mean, if you do 36, you'll be like 55 years old with this, when you finish up. So it's, I don't know. I think it's time. I really do. I really wanted to do the transition to the Big Ten, get back where I started. Loved my years in the SEC. You know how fun it is to be on a team, and our SEC on CBS team was great. And now doing the Big Ten on CBS has been, a dream come true to go back. So I know I'm going to miss it, but since I've got a whole year to work, I probably won't feel it until I'm watching you guys in 2026. So that'll probably be the first time I really will miss it.
So at the end of 2025, no more Gary Danielson on CBS College Football Saturdays. I almost said SEC on CBS, but of course they no longer have the contract. Gary Danielson is such an interesting case when it comes to the viewer broadcaster relationship, because I feel like he's one of those people that the majority of people all kind of hate. Right? Like there's some broadcasters that half hate, half love, half hate, half love. But for the most part, I mean, you can peruse any message board or Twitter or whatever on a college football Saturday in the past when they were covering the SEC particularly, and everybody hated on Gary Danielson. Everybody said, oh, he hates my team, or he's talking about this, he's talking about that. Like, I don't recall too many broadcasters that were so captivatingly, had such a captivatingly negative opinion about them than Gary Danielson. I mean, I never really cared one way or the other. He can be annoying at times. I think a lot of people's gripe with him is kind of his fixation with kind of the top of the sport at the time, whether it be Alabama, Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, Tua, whatever it may be. He kind of latched on to the best teams, the best quarterbacks, and that could become annoying at times for a lot of people. I get that. I understand it. And it did definitely feel weird this past year without hearing Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson on calls of SEC games. I mean, yeah, I still tuned in for some of the Big Ten stuff when the games were actually watchable, and it wasn't, I don't know, Rutgers and Purdue at 3:30 on a Saturday or something like that. But it was kind of weird not having to be the voice of that premier game in the SEC on Saturdays. And quite frankly, I feel like the 3:30 time slot kind of lost its luster a little bit. It's still cool, and it's still kind of billed as this premier spot, but something about, because CBS got one game a week, right? And you could tell that they put everything into that game. Where ESPN, they got a million of them, and they got all the SEC games now. And, they tend to put more into what happens at 7 or 7:30, because I feel like that 3:30 spot doesn't quite have the shine as it had in the past when you had to do it on CBS. And we all, hey, who's going to be the CBS game of the week? 3:30, kickoff, all that kind of stuff. And Brad and Gary, or Vern and Gary back in the day on the call. Not quite the same. But, again, regardless of what you feel about Gary Danielson, he will call it a career at the end of 2025, and then we'll see who joins the great Brad Nessler in the booth for 2026 and beyond, and continues to call Big Ten football games for the foreseeable future, because that's the new contract, and I highly doubt ESPN's going to relinquish their death grip on the SEC now that they finally have them under contract. That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Again, you're going to hear Chris Clark's conversation with transfer offensive lineman Nick Sharp, as well as Brady Hunt, who enters year number 2 as tight end here at South Carolina. It's all coming up next here on your Thursday on The Game.
Everyone knows that AAA Heating and Air has the best HVAC replacement options in the Midlands with their guaranteed financing, no payments or interest for 12 months, and a 15-year parts and labor warranty. They're hard to beat when you need a new system. But did you know they also have great deals for repairs? That's right. If your system is broken and you're strapped for cash, AAA Heating and Air can help. They'll get your repairs done with payment options for up to 12 months and also no credit check required. That's right. So if you are the homeowner, all you need is a valid bank account. That's it. That's all you need. So don't wait. Call AAA Heating and Air today and get your comfort back on track. AAA Heating and Air, comfort you can trust.
And welcome in. It's the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. I'm Chris Clark. Hanging out with another Gamecock football player. This time it's Nick Sharp, offensive lineman. First year here in Columbia. So, Nick, appreciate you taking time, man. How's everything going for you?
Pretty well. Thank you for having me. Loving Columbia right now. Spring ball is nice. Weather is nice.
The weather is fantastic, man. I just came from outside, and it is beautiful. Aside from the pollen, woo.
Yes, yes.
Does the pollen affect you like it does me?
The pollen is crazy. Oh,
It's really bad. Do y'all have it as bad in? I know you're from North Carolina originally too. Is it that bad there in North Carolina as it is here in the Midlands of South Carolina?
honestly, it's not. I've never seen it like this bad.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah.
day like I don't know what was that, a week or two ago, and you just go outside and things are just yellow all of a sudden. So pretty bad stuff. But yeah, man, great to have you here, and got a lot of things I want to get to because we're just kind of getting to know you around here. Glad to hear you're enjoying Columbia. What have been kind of your first impressions of just Columbia, the football program, the coaching staff? What else kind of stood out to you so far?
First impressions, it's kind of more than what I expected. Like, I kind of expected great energy and everybody really loving what they're doing. But now that I'm here, like, I see it a lot more. So I see that like the energy is a lot better than what it's even portrayed on social media. So that's a really good thing for us coaches and stuff like that. And then just the community around Gamecock football, the energy around it is the same. So that's been really nice to see as well.
Nick, I know you're from Gastonia, North Carolina, and
Yes,
so
sir.
obviously pretty close to here. When you were in high school, did you ever take a visit to South Carolina? Did you ever camp here? Like, did you have any familiarity with the school at all?
I did not take a visit or camp at South Carolina during high school.
Okay.
During my time in high school, I didn't really spend a lot of time camping, and then by the time I would have like went to camps, COVID had just hit, so
Yep.
I didn't end up going to too many camps. So I would have for sure came down to Columbia and came to a camp or two and visited a few times.
So your first game at Williams-Brice Stadium will literally be, the first time you've, been inside the stadium for a game then. That's kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah, that's crazy. I've seen videos, things like that, but to be in that environment and that atmosphere is going to be nice.
Tell me about that recruiting process in high school, because I think it's a good point you made. Your freshman season of college was 2021. So, you kind of went through the COVID thing and that really kind of hurt a lot of guys, especially like late bloomer type guys, from getting bigger offers. But what was the high school process like for you? I mean, you obviously ended up, going to Wake Forest, spending several seasons there and everything. But what do you remember about the high school process?
So as far as what I remember, the high school process, I went to Hunter Huss High School, so it was a lot. At that point in time, it was a lot of players that came right before me that was going to Division I schools and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say I had it easy, but it was already eyes on like our school as a whole. So all I had to do was really just put in the work to be noticed. And I would probably say my freshman year, I was starting to get noticed by my coaches at the high school, and then my sophomore year, I really started to get noticed by a few college coaches. Picked up a few offers, one or two offers, and then after my junior year, that's whenever I started having offers coming in. But that's whenever COVID hit, so I really didn't get to take too many visits. I was invited to a lot of visits at that point of time, but I didn't really get to schedule too many visits at that point of time and stuff like that. So it's kind of what I remember. Just it was a lot of we had eyes on us young for like the people that was in my class and stuff like that. We had eyes on us young, but if you put in the work and you just stay, you continue to keep your head down and work, you kind of got the opportunity that you've wanted. as a younger kid. So I'm very grateful for that during my high school recruitment and stuff like that. Is the players that came before me.
Hanging out here with Nick Sharp at Gamecock Football on the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Nick, that is a very interesting comparison when you think about transfer portal recruiting, right? You obviously spent, like we said, a few seasons at Wake Forest and then decided to enter the transfer portal. And that to me has always loved asking guys about the portal recruiting process, because usually for guys like yourself, you're getting even bigger looks than, or more looks than even bigger looks, more looks than you got out of the high school level. And man, it's just so condensed, right? Like you're trying to make a decision. What do you have? Like a couple weeks, basically? I mean, to kind of get it sorted out. Like, how did you handle that? Like, how much was your phone blowing up, and how did you decide, okay, let me try to get this under control and get some structure here?
I would say for me, I kind of came into that whole process with structure. Like I knew questions that I wanted to ask coaches. I knew what I came to schools for visits. Like I wasn't really in the portal to go to a school and put on jerseys and take pictures and stuff like that. Not like saying that that's wrong.
Yeah.
But like I kind of been in college a while. Like I understood like what I'm here for and what they need from me and what I'm like asking from them. So it's kind of just seeing and asking the right questions that I needed to know and hearing what they wanted to know and see how they can get me better in South Carolina. It was the best interview out of all the schools that I went to.
What was it about those questions and the answers they provided that made you so comfortable that and so convinced that, hey, this is going to be the place for my last year?
I would say for me being a player that's been in college for 4 years, it wasn't like I was being recruited in high school all over again, where like I'm just continuing to be told how good I am and stuff like that, and like we really want you and blase blase. But it was a lot of coaches like here. It was more so like, how can we get you to take this step in this area of your game, or like let's see how you were here. How can we get this to the next level? So it was a lot of that kind of got my eyes open to understand like South Carolina is the place that can really take my game to the next level.
Tell us a little bit about how important, the coaches just, I know you don't have a lot of time to build relationships, right? But a lot of guys have, out of the portal, I mean, but a lot of the guys who've gone through the portal process have told me, you're going a lot off of first impressions. Like maybe you've met some of the coaches before, during the high school recruiting process, but a lot of these coaches are going to be, guys that are kind of new to you. And so just the relationships that you were able to build and the impressions you got initially from, Lonnie Teasley and Greg Adkins and Sam Sorbet and Coach Beamer, what were those like?
I mean, it was just honesty, honestly. I didn't really feel like it was kind of any like sugarcoating anything and stuff like that. I kind of just felt like they told me everything straightforward, and that's kind of all I was looking for from any school that I may have visited or anything. Like people that was honest and kind of treated me like a man and not like a high school boy coming in. So that was something that I appreciated from everybody at USC.
All right, Nick, we're going to take a quick time out. And on the other side, want to talk a little bit about how spring ball's going so far, how things are looking for you, and then just the next steps in your development that we were touching on here before. But we'll be right back after a quick time out. More with Nick Sharp from Gamecock Football. On the other side, you're listening to the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. If you're out there looking for a local, reliable HVAC service for your home or your business in the Midlands, reach out to our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. KrantzCooling.com, Krantz, cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com, or give Justin Krantz, the general manager over there, and his team a call, 803-755-0793. I've had Krantz Cooling out to my home several times. They did a mini split for me in the garage. They've checked out all the other units at my house to make sure they're running in tip-top shape. Love my experience so much that when my mom moved to Irmo, I got them to go out to her home, too. They put in 2 mini splits for her. They handle all her HVAC needs as well. They could do the same for you. KrantzCooling.com or 803-755-0793. Since 1983, Krantz Cooling, their team has been providing great service to business owners and families in the Midlands. They can do the same for you. All right, welcome back in. Chris Clark here on The Game, hanging out with Nick Sharper, Gamecock Football. You're listening to the Gamecock Club Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Appreciate those guys for making the show possible. And to the Gamecock Club, of course. Nick, before we get into spring ball, since we were talking about the Gamecock Club, Gamecock fans, I know that you guys have done some events and things like that. It's kind of cool, kind of neat that your first game in Williams-Brice Stadium is going to be whenever you suit up for the first time this year, which is pretty cool. But what have you thought of Gamecock Nation and what you've seen from them, like on social media, what you've seen from them at some of these events that you guys have been able to do?
Electric is the word that I would use, honestly. Whenever I first made my commitment on Twitter, I had a lot of like supporters and stuff like that commenting and messaging me saying how much they're happy that I became a Gamecock and stuff like that. So electric is the word, and enthused is another word. Very excited to for this upcoming season for everybody.
Yeah, no doubt, man. They are definitely enthusiastic. There's no doubt about that. So let's get into spring ball a little bit. First of all, your experience, if I'm not mistaken, has mostly been, on the interior of the offensive line at the college level. And is that kind of where the staff has you pegged right now as an offensive guard? Like, where all have you been working this spring?
Just guard, center.
Yeah.
Just trying to like become versatile. That's all. Don't really have set positions or anything like that. Just me trying to basically grow as a player, going back to the same things that coach talked to me about during my visit was just me learning different positions and growing as a player. So just learning all three inside positions.
What do you think that next step is? Or it's probably not just one, right? But like, what are those kind of things that maybe y'all identified during the recruiting process when you sat down on the visit? And just even personally, individually, like, what is it that you feel like you really need to work on to make this year your best one yet, and go on to the professional level once you're finished up here?
Probably say main thing that I've been talking about so far is just showing versatility. That's probably the biggest thing for me is just showing that I'm capable of it on a consistent basis and not just being locked in one position how I was at Wake Forest, but just showing that I can play multiple positions.
We always love asking the new guys, whether it's freshmen or transfers, their thoughts on the strength and conditioning program, the nutrition program, because a lot of them, even guys like yourself that have been at Power Four schools, sometimes they say, yeah, it's kind of a little different. Like, what were your thoughts once you got acclimated to the program and the way Coach Day does things and Yemi Rodriguez and the nutrition staff?
I would say it is different, but it's different in the best way because if I told somebody what kind of sold me, I guess, on my visit, I would say it's the strength staff, honestly. That was the main spot that talked about taking my game to that next level. They didn't really look at me and be like, oh, yeah, he's like big and strong and stuff like that. It was, all right, it's some other stuff that we can also get you better at that'll take your game to the next level on the field. So I would say like very different as far as other programs. But yeah, I'm just getting better in those areas that we've talked about in the nutrition system, nutrition, and in the weight room. So just growing and getting better.
Well, while we're on the subject of nutrition, I know they feed you guys very, very well over there at all times. Are you a big cook? Like, do you like to whip up anything at the house when you're away from the facility?
Not really, honestly. I'm learning, but not really a huge cook, but I'm learning still.
Well, they got classes over there, right? Won't they teach y'all some things if you want?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they can. Yeah. What are you learning in right now? Like, what do you do in school? Like, what are you thinking after ball? As far as, I don't know whether or not you kind of got that figured out or lined up yet.
Right now, my mindset is maybe get into coaching. Just because I love the game, I love like watching, teammates and stuff like that get better. Yep. So maybe get into coaching. I don't really have anything as far as that thought out so far, just because I know right now my main focus is having a great season and, going to the NFL and playing for a long time. But I would like to eventually get back in to coaching.
I know that when you were at Wake, you played against, some high-level defensive linemen to try to block. I mean, you faced off actually against Ole Miss from the SEC. You played Clemson. Like, how do you feel like playing that competition while obviously, I mean, I'm not trying to get you in trouble or anything. I think the SEC is probably the best college football conference out there, but there's going to be most weeks you're going to be lining up across from, other guys who are going to go play in the NFL. But how do you feel like that facing off against the Ole Misses, the Clemsons of the world, kind of helped you prepare for what you're going to see here?
I mean, for me, I have a lot of confidence as a player myself. So just having playing against those teams and stuff like that, to me, it was just all about if I do my job, if I have the right technique, and if I play hard, then I'll be noticed type of mindset. So whenever I entered into the portal, the significance of who I was playing at that point in time didn't really matter to me. Like,
yep.
Me playing Ole Miss, it wasn't really too much in my head of, oh man, like playing big time SEC Ole Miss, or I'm playing Clemson, like really great D linemen. My mindset was just, we playing against them. They're not on my team. I have to do my job.
Yeah.
So I think as far as in the moment, it was, I don't want to say it was what it was, but it was kind of like I have a job to do, they have a job to do, and I need to do my job a lot better and harder than they do theirs. And yeah, I mean, and I agree with you as well. I obviously knew that big time SEC ball is like a lot of the players in the SEC end up in the NFL. So I think that's a big reason to why I also decided to come to South Carolina, is because I'm playing against great competition every week, week in, week out, and just preparing like a pro to be able to, make it to the NFL and kind of repeat that same cycle.
Nick, are there any guys that obviously you are very experienced at the college level, but first year here, and so just kind of learning like the ropes, I guess, of a new place. Are there any guys that you leaned on, whether it's in the O-line room or coaches or other fellow teammates, that you kind of really leaned on to help get you acclimated to things here?
I'd probably say a few of the older guys, a few guys in the offensive line room, Tro. And guys like Nick Barrett. I know he's on the D-line, but guys like Nick Barrett, we're all around that same age. So being around those guys and seeing how they are and what their routine is, even Kaysen, being around a lot of those guys and seeing what their routine is on a day-to-day basis is something that I've always been intrigued in. No matter what level I'm at or where I'm at.
Any opening thoughts in these first, few spring practices, just about, any just observations or takeaways? I know you're kind of in there in the heat of moment in practice and then reviewing film, but like when you're on the field, have you had any takeaways about the energy level of the team or anything that's really stuck out to you so far?
Very, very mature team. It's one of the, I've been around a lot of great teams, a lot of older veteran teams, but for how this team is and how young actually, like for college years, this team is, very mature. We get a lot of stuff done in practice, and we learn a lot, and we kind of all handle things like pros. And I know for some of these guys, they really don't understand or see it so far yet, just because, it's what they're accustomed to. But a lot of the way that we do things here is it's not done like that a lot of places.
Good stuff, Nick. All right. Well, hey, man, I'm going to let you get out of here and get back to it. I know you got a busy schedule, especially during spring ball. But thanks so much for taking some time to hang out with us here. It's been fun.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's Nick Sharp from Gamecock Football. You're listening to the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. We'll be right back on the other side. If you are looking for a reliable local roofing company to help your home or business with your roofing needs, check out our friends at Classic Roofing. Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, our guys, friends of the program here. They can help you take good care of your roof. That can be challenging, but you don't have to do it alone. They have years of expertise under their hats. They're a local company. Again, their families live right here in the Midlands, and the guys at Classic Roofing are GAF certified roofers. Only about 7% of roofers nationwide even have that certification. They can do inspections, installations, replacements, and repairs on your roof. You can visualize your new roof and what it would look like at classicroofingsc.com. You can check out their reviews and get a free estimate there. classicroofingsc.com, or give them a call, 803-590-7870. That's the reliable roofers over at Classic Roofing. Welcome back in. It's the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. And got another Gamecock football player now joining us. You just heard from Nick Sharp. Now we got Brady Hunt from the tight end room. Brady, it's been a while, man. How's everything been for you?
It's been good. Getting rolling the spring ball and happy to be back out there playing.
Well, I'm glad you said that. That's the biggest thing. The first thing I was going to ask you is I know at the end of the year you were dealing with an injury, got banged up. How are you feeling health-wise? Everything good?
I feel great. I feel 100%. Awesome. Back to full go. So it's, like I said, just good to be back out there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's kind of, before we dive into spring ball, talk a little bit about the off season and winter workouts with Coach Day. I know that's always an interesting time, a challenging time, all those things. But how did you feel like the team did this off season to, kind of get prepared to roll here into spring?
Yeah, I think the off season was great. I would say it really was exciting just seeing a lot of the new guys in the buy-in that they had. It felt like a team that was really focused and, on a mission to get better, which I know we need. We're trying to go farther, and it starts in the weight room in the off season. But as far as Coach Day goes, I mean, you saw what South Carolina did at Pro Day, so we know that all the stuff that they're putting in is paying off, and it was definitely a good winter.
Well, you mentioned the new guys, and that brought a couple questions immediately to mind. And the first one is you guys are adding a tight end from the transfer portal and Jordan Dingle, who's coming from Kentucky, actually has some ties to the state of South Carolina, some family ties. But, Jordan, from what I know, is a good kid. I mean, what have you thought of him just kind of integrating into the room so far?
Yeah, he's been great. Obviously, since he's been here, just jumping in and learning as fast as he can, but me also being able to learn from him and the experiences that he's had playing in the SEC. But he's a great dude, works hard, and fits in well with the room. So I'm excited about the tight end room that we have this year.
Well, the other question that was brought to mind was, and Coach Beamer has talked about this. So many leaders from last year's team were lost, to Pro Day. Like you said, like a lot of guys that are going to have the opportunity, which is really cool to go pro. All the team captains from last year, the permanent captains except Lenoris. And so I guess a couple questions off of that. Do you feel like being one of the older guys, do you feel some, I don't know if responsibility is the right word, but do you foresee yourself maybe having an opportunity to step up into more of a leadership role this year? Or have you seen some other guys like in the course of this offseason or early spring that have been able to step forward as leaders?
Yeah, I think, obviously when you lose that many older guys and guys that were integral parts of the team, obviously there's going to be a little bit of a void there as far as leadership goes. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to, challenge myself and be more of a vocal leader. And, just as I am one of the older guys, even though I've only been at South Carolina for a year, as far as college football goes, I'm one of the older guys. So just being able to bring whatever I can. But I think, across the board with the guys that have been around college football for a long time, there's a lot of guys stepping up. Obviously, Lenoris with, him coming back and the type of year he had last year, he's been big leadership-wise. And then, I'm just thinking about the guys in the front row in the team meetings, JB, Nick Barrett, all those guys that have been around college football for a long time. I think we're all kind of trying to fill in where those guys left. And I think we've got the guys that can do it and looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's some good insight, man. So you mentioned the tight end room. Let's go back there because I think you have the most expertise out of any of the rooms of that one since you're in it every day. And first thing, let's recap kind of last year for you, right? So how was year one? I know the end of the season for you personally probably wasn't the best individually because you did have to miss some time there, but obviously a lot of team success. You were a big part of that, down the stretch as well. But how was year one for you just overall?
Yeah, I'd say it was a lot of fun. Obviously being able to win 9 games and having a chance at the playoff, that's kind of what we're in it for. Obviously we would like to go farther, but last year was a lot of fun, and especially just being able to learn from a guy like Josh Simon and seeing the type of year that he had and the way that he worked. And just being able to learn from the things that he does well and try to integrate those into my game. Last year was a lot of fun. Obviously, like you said, getting banged up there at the end of the year wasn't necessarily a fun time, but it's part of the sport we play. So definitely excited or enjoyed last year, but excited for next year.
How do you feel like you grew the most from, coming over from Ball State, and not just that, like just another year of football, like another year to mature, another year to get better on the field. Like where do you feel like you grew last year the most? And then maybe what's the next step for you in 2025?
Yeah, I'd say last year, personally, there was a big learning curve coming from the MAC to the SEC. So one of the biggest things I learned was, playing with speed and really technique to be able to hang with some of these bigger dudes and the speed of the game. So that was probably the biggest step I say that I took on the field. And then off the field, obviously with Coach Day, just getting bigger, stronger, a little bit faster. Those are probably the two biggest steps. And then as far as for this next season, really just consistency is the biggest thing for me. I feel like I have spurts where I look really good and then some lulls where I feel like I need to level that out and have more, consistency in my play. So that's really one of the things I'm focusing on this spring and this fall camp.
When you talk about that consistency, is it more like what do you see when is it more of, hey, that route could have been cleaner, or is my technique was off on that blocking assignment, or is it like maybe it's just some of all of the above?
Yeah, I'd say it's all of the above. When you're watching every play of every practice and every game, you kind of become a perfectionist. That's the business that we're in. So whether it's false steps in the run game or, getting out of transitions in the pass game, it's just all of that stuff. And trying to put it together to where, I'm limiting those to have as few mistakes or, little details that I'm missing throughout a game.
Well, one thing that I always find fascinating is, Sean Elliott is obviously your coach, and for a great portion of his career, he's been an offensive line guy, obviously head coach, a run game coordinator, a run game guy. And I would imagine he's just got to bring such kind of that like physical mindset to the tight end room, right? Am I right on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He loves to get down and dirty. So, physicality isn't a negotiable in the tight end room. So that's definitely one of the things that I've taken from him.
So I mentioned earlier, and I kind of got off track, like the tight end room. You talked a little bit about Jordan earlier, talked about Josh Simon from last year. Give us maybe the rundown on some of the other guys in the room and what you've seen from them, since you've been here, and what you've seen from them in the offseason as well. Mike Smith, I know, isn't going through spring, but he got off to a good start last year. You got Mo Brown. Like, break down some of the other guys in that room for us.
Yeah, I think overall we just have a really good room. Obviously, like you said, Mike last year had a lot of production and played well as a freshman, and he's just going to continue to get better. And then Mo Brown obviously played a lot in special teams and is working hard on tight end and working his way into playing some. And, he brings a lot of things to the table that, kind of balances out the rest of the room. And I think that's one of the things that's big about our room this year is everybody kind of balances each other out. Obviously Dingle working in there, and then guys coming back like Vose and Mike. It's just a good group of guys, and enjoy going in and working with them every day.
One of the storylines, going into this spring and even through the first few practices has been the group of freshman wideouts. And I don't know, how much you're obviously in your tight end kind of bubble, right? But you are out there in offense, you're out there, in the off season when you guys are working some different stuff. What have been your impressions of the newcomers at receiver? Five, ultimately a 6-man class, but 5 of them here now from the freshman class. And then even some of the returners, like you mentioned JB earlier, but JB, Nick Carver, Mazio Bennett. How do you think that wide receiver room is shaping up?
I'm excited for our wide receiver room. The guys that you mentioned that are coming back. Obviously, Nick Carver keeps getting better and keeps making big plays. Mazio had a lot of production last year and is going to keep getting better. And then JB, was making plays when he was healthy, and hopefully he can stay that way this year. But then for the freshmen, I feel like we've got a lot of guys that come in and go to work, and they don't practice like they're freshmen. So they go out there and, are just working to get better every day. And obviously the whole room's still a competition, but I'm excited about the guys that we do have in that room.
We're going to take a quick timeout, and on the other side, more with Brady Hunt from Gamecock Football. You're listening to the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. All right, welcome back in. Last segment here with Brady Hunt from Gamecock Football. I'm Chris Clark. It's the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Brady, let's go off the field a little bit, man. You've been in Columbia a while. You've had a chance to get acclimated. I know you don't get a lot of free time, but anything that you found fun to do here? What do you like to do?
I mean, really the biggest thing I do is golf.
Yeah.
And then spend time with my wife whenever I'm away from ball and away from school. Obviously those two things take up a lot of time, but try to spend as much time with my wife as I can. And sometimes we'll go out golfing, show her right along in the cart.
Okay. Nice. All right. Now, are you one of the better golfers on the team?
I don't know. I'm probably, up there. I don't, there's probably guys on the team that can beat me, but I'm, good enough to go out there and compete with them. So
you can be dangerous. Okay. You mentioned you're married, and I had Big Boaz on with me, and he's also a married man. We're losing D Knight from the married ranks, unfortunately. We all love D Knight, but I mean, do you ever do you and Boaz I don't know if are there any other married? You don't have to call them out. Are y'all the only married guys on the team? Do we maybe have some other ones?
I think we're the only married ones, but I think there's a couple other that are engaged. So
I know at least
one.
Alone. Yeah. I do know there's at least one engaged. I don't know, man. I feel like the staff is starting to go after more guys out of the portal that are engaged or married. It's like a little recruiting pitch for them.
Yeah. Something like that.
It's going pretty well, but no, I mean, you enjoy married life so far? Everything been good?
Yeah, it's been great.
That's awesome. So, golf, riding around on the golf cart a little bit. Any good restaurants that you've been to in Columbia that you got any go-tos?
Well, we live pretty close to. There's this Mexican place in KC called El Jimador. So whenever we got a quick dinner, it's always there. My wife loves Market on Main, so we go there quite a bit.
Yep, good spot.
But yeah, we try to kind of bounce around and go to some new spots every once in a while.
Well, it's super nice out right now, which I know y'all are enjoying during practice, except for the pollen. Whew.
The pollen's crazy.
It is.
It's not like that back in Indiana, so.
It's not even. I was talking to Nick Sharp, and it's not even like that in North Carolina. It's just he's from North Carolina. It's been killing me lately, but it'll heat up here soon for sure. Are you do you like more of the colder weather climate like you might have back home, or is this kind of your ideal? What we got going on right now is 72 degrees.
No, the weather right now is perfect. If it would stay like that all the way through August, that'd be wonderful. Unfortunately, it gets pretty hot, but
it gets very hot and very humid.
Yeah, I like to stay away from the cold, especially when I'm playing football.
No doubt about it. Did you get to go anywhere fun in the off season or spring break or anything? Did you get to go take a little vacation?
Spring break, I went down to Dallas. Just was out there, working out and working with some guys. And then we get the month of May off, and I'm going to Marco Island during that. So that'll be a fun little trip to get away.
Heck yeah, that'll be nice, man. Well, let's get back, in our last couple minutes, let's talk a little bit more ball. Other newcomer impressions. One guy that I'm really interested to see this spring is Rasul Faison, the Utah State running back transfer. Bigger kid than I thought. What have been your impressions of him so far, just kind of getting to watch him out there?
He's a good player. I feel like, within that whole running back room, we've got guys that, are going to be able to go out there and make plays for us. And that's huge, especially in the SEC, having multiple running backs that can go out there and perform. And I think we have that within that room. So, but just first impressions, him being here, I think he's a good player and is definitely going to help us this year.
We also we had a chance to talk to Mike Shula earlier this week. And, from what he described, it's kind of like, hey, you're kind of taking the pieces of the offense that worked last year that were kind of, can be our bread and butter, going to add some things in. You take spring to kind of learn what your players can do well, what this team likes to accomplish, right? But, just from what you know about Shula or what you've seen so far, how would you describe his offense? What would you say, it's quote unquote pro style, or is there some way you could describe it?
I don't really know if there's a specific word for it, but I would say that I think he does a really good job of using the players that we have and kind of, like he said, using the things that we did well last year and putting his own little spin on it and tweaking it a little bit. Every offseason you kind of self-reflect and look at what you did well and try to keep building on that, and then look at the things that you didn't do well and try to fill in the gaps. And I think he's done a really good job of that so far. So I'm excited, the way he's installing things and the way he's got us out there playing offense.
So to open the show, you kind of repeated Coach Beamer's catchphrase isn't the right word, kind of like a mantra that he's had coming into the season, which is to go farther than y'all did last year. So like in your mind, when I know y'all have been talking about that a lot, what does that mean? How do you get there, I guess? What are the steps that y'all are trying to take right now?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about going farther is, in order to go farther, you got to get to where you've already been. So we can't even talk about going farther until we get to where we got last year. And the only way we got there was, by working with a little bit of a target on our back mindset. Like, nobody believes in us. And even though we had the year that we had last year, I think kind of continuing that mindset is big for us, and keeping that edge as we work towards our goals. And, like I said, get to where we got last year and then take it, farther, hopefully get into the college football playoff and, work for a championship. Cause that's what we're all here to do.
All right. Awesome stuff. Well, Brady, I'm gonna let you run, man. Really appreciate you taking time to join me here on the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Schooling and Heating, and wishing you all the best, man. Glad you're healthy and good to go now, and wishing all the best for you. We'll catch up soon. All right.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, man. That's been Brady Hunt here on the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Schooling and Heating. Up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour with me and Wes and Tyler. Our friends over at Integrated Media can make any of your audio-visual dreams come true at your home. You don't have to use the big box stores. So if you are looking to put a new TV in your home, if you're looking to improve your internet signal, if you're moving, if you're building a new home and you need to have your AV taken care of, you don't have to use those big box stores. You don't have to look at the thousands of different options online. Just give Michael, Nathan, the team at Integrated Media a call, 803-948-8327. They can come out to your home just like they did for me, just like they did for Wes. They can help you out with everything from sourcing the equipment, letting you know what's the best, to professionally installing it for you. If you got dead spots in your home, if you want to extend your Wi-Fi signal outside, you want to build that new man cave or trick out your patio, they can do it for you. 803-948-8327 or visit their website, integratedmediainc.com.
11 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here on the game. So we are a little over a week into spring practice for South Carolina. Second day you guys got to go out there and take a look at things. What stood out today?
Beautiful day.
Great
in the neighborhood.
Any complaints on the weather today? Anybody? Pollen, anything like that?
Nope.
Not that I heard.
I'll tell you, I did hear one complaint. It was not weather related. It was because of how far away the players were on the field. They went to the far field, so we had to walk, across, so about over 100 yards, I guess. We had to cross 2 fields.
Yeah.
So there was a complaint about that.
It's exercise.
We're not naming names on that one.
Nope.
Would it be somebody we all know?
Hopefully they're listening. Some people would know.
Okay. That's the only complaint for the day.
And I'm like, if they are listening, I'm kind of half joking. Yeah. It wasn't like a serious complaint. Yeah, but it was like,
we got to walk all that way.
They're so far away. Why'd they do that? It was funny, but it was a beautiful day out there, and we got to see,
of course, special team stuff.
Oh yeah, stretch, and I think we got right into some special teams.
Who is stretching the best out of anyone? Can you guys make that determination yet?
Luke Doty. There it is. I mean, we both were going to say the same guy. Luke, I don't think we talked about this last week. There's a little interesting shift there in Luke's role. He still goes through the special teams drills, but he warms up with the quarterbacks and is in a quarterback jersey. So he's been getting work with the quarterbacks again, which I think is noteworthy. When you look at the lack of experience in that room otherwise, and you look at the fact that he would be the only guy in that room other than Lenoris that has started an SEC football game before at quarterback.
True.
So I think Luke quietly is like an option for you there, because in terms of like a backup role, because we know how big having Robbie ended up being last year. And you do, especially have a running quarterback, you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared for it anyway, but you better be prepared for that possibility, certainly with a running quarterback.
Because Luke spent most of his time in the wide receiver room last fall. I know he's still doing quarterback stuff, but he was more focused on being a wide receiver, correct?
Yes, that was always my understanding. Like, I think it was always kind of split, and, you may be splitting hairs a little bit, but I think there was a lot of talk about him just focusing, especially last spring. Hey, he wants to focus on wide receiver. I was told before spring ball started, like, hey, Luke is back in that QB room, spending a lot of time over there. So what exactly does that mean? I can't give you like the split, but I think, and I asked somebody after the first practice, I was like, hey, so I saw Luke running, with the quarterbacks, but also doing special teams. Did he take some reps at quarterback? And I was told he did. So, I think that is maybe a small right now, but potentially bigger storyline for us to keep an eye on as this thing progresses, especially with the fact we're not getting to see like 11 on 11 right now. So you have to kind of just glean what you can from what we see out there.
Yeah, I mean, zero, not that a position battle is necessarily drama, but there's no quarterback room drama. There's no controversy. There's no, position battle for number one, but there is with number two, which, as we know, can end up being very important. I mean, there were some instances last season, as you just said, Wes. So, who is that guy going to be? And we knew that you were going to have a returner in Dante Reno. You were going to have a transfer in Air Nolan and a true freshman in Cutter Woods, who, by the way, has seemed to turn a lot of heads just with, his size, his arm, super productive in high school. And he's an intangibles guy, too. Like, everybody that has interacted with him, seen how he carries himself, they've been very impressed. You've got those three, but then you add in the fact that, okay, how do they feel the rest of the year? You know, how do you feel about that position coming out of spring, summer, then into the preseason? It figures that all those guys are going to grow, but when you throw Luke in there, a guy who has not only played in but started SEC games as a quarterback at South Carolina, you know, that adds kind of a layer of intrigue and adds, I don't know if it's the right way to classify it, like not an insurance policy, right? But certainly somebody who has experience that the staff seems to really trust there.
And that brings up the question, like, again, we hope Lenore Sellers is healthy the entire season. We're not having to have this conversation, but God forbid he goes down with an injury in a very critical game against Ole Miss or Alabama or something like that, and your option is to turn to one of these three guys, Aaron Nolan, Dante Reno, or Cutter Woods, that have not taken competitive snaps. Dante Reno came in garbage time last year, but you know what I mean, against high-caliber competition, or a guy in Luke Doty who's been around forever and has actually started in quality SEC games. Who would you turn to in that situation? Your answer might actually be Doty just because of the experience.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that depends on what happens, you know, these next 5 months. And part of that will be, all right, and again, we're not seeing behind closed doors, how much have you done to prepare Luke for that moment? Some of that is determined now in the spring. Some of that really is determined on your game week. Like when you're actually going through that game plan, typically you know your one is going to get more reps than your QB2. But what do you have sort of in the game plan for that number two guy? And you know, I think a lot of that has to be predetermined before you go into a game. And you know, I think a big part of the spring is going to be, all right, how far along can you bring the young guys? How far along can you bring who is also a young guy, but I kind of put in a little bit different category, in Aaron Noland? And what do they look like as the spring progresses? Day one, you may be saying, you know, this guy couldn't go win a football game for us in the SEC today. But luckily, you don't have to do that the middle of March. You have to be able to do that potentially in September. So how much progress can you make, and how does that shape your plan for that position? You know, it may be that, you know, Luke ends up being that option, but if he is, you would put a much greater emphasis on getting him ready for that, you know, versus like, hey, let's just get Luke a few snaps of like an emergency situation quarterback thing. So I certainly don't think that's the biggest storyline of spring, but I think it's kind of a little bit under the radar storyline right now that could factor in. And the thing about your backup quarterback, it's not really a storyline at all until you need a backup quarterback, and then it's the single biggest storyline in your entire team for that week, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Or if a guy, you know, is struggling, then it goes to the backup quarterback being the most popular guy. I don't think any of us expect that, right? There was a list. I don't know if you saw this, Tyler. I meant to send it to you, but we were busy out there at practice. But ESPN just put out a list of the top 15 returning quarterbacks in the country, and Lenore Sellers was on that list. It was in kind of descending order, and he was, I think, in the top 5, ahead of some big-name guys, right?
Yep.
So
yeah.
We certainly all anticipate him having a really good year. I think you were probably talking about this more in terms of just if something happens. I mean, look last year, LSU game, you know, Lenoris has to go out, Robbie comes in, does some good things, right? But you don't have a Robbie Ashford, so who do you have? And I agree with you, Wes. It's definitely something, you know, people didn't come into spring talking about that as much. It was kind of a point of intrigue because you always want to know, hey, who do you have as a backup quarterback in case something happens? You didn't have a competition, but we don't know yet, you know? Like that, this is going to be something we're going to be watching, I think, throughout the spring, and I would imagine into summer and into preseason camp too.
Yeah, and I mean, I would even say, dude, even with QB1, like you're already getting at the point where a guy can go 24 for 34 for 260 yards in a game, and people are acting like it's the worst quarterback performance they've ever seen. Like the expectations for Sellers have already changed so much in 1 year. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people that have, he missed some throws in that game, and I'm like, guys, what quarterback I know he missed some throws. What quarterback does not miss some throws? So that position It just comes with as much scrutiny as really anything in sports, I think, in terms of just being in the public eye. You can miss a handful of throws in a game, and people are, he played terrible. Threw for 260 yards.
Success yields expectations.
It does. So we're at that point now already, but certainly once you get to that point of needing a backup quarterback, you better have that. And you just hope that that's never even a conversation in your season, right? Like it doesn't get to that point. But as physical as college football is, especially as physical as SEC is, even if it's for a drive or two at some point, like I think that's probably your best case scenario, right? Like you're probably not going to go through a season where even if your guy stays healthy, that he's going to be able to play just literally every single snap for a year that's not in garbage time.
But this is Luke Doty's last actual year of eligibility, right? Like this is it. Are we sure on that?
We're pretty sure. Pretty sure.
Because he was honored. Was he honored at Senior Day last year? I feel like he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
He wasn't? I thought he was on the list.
Was he, Chris?
I can't remember. There were a lot of guys.
No. I don't think he was.
Was he honored the year before?
I think Luke already knew he was coming back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seriously, though, this is the last year.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Between injuries and COVID, he had an extra year in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final ride. Last ride.
The last ride. Final one for Luke Doty, and then he can start whatever business he wants in Columbia, and he'll be loved because of it.
Indeed.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll get into more practice observations. Wes Chris out there at the second edition of media availability for practice in the spring so far through this cycle. With that coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris on your Thursday here on the game. Reminder tonight, 6 o'clock, Carolina Calls with Coach Maneri here on the game in Columbia, as well as 100.3 the game out in Myrtle Beach as he looks ahead to the Tennessee series coming up this weekend for Gamecock baseball. Getting back to what you guys were able to observe out there in your limited availability this morning. Talked about Luke Doty, once again, kind of working with the quarterbacks this spring and maybe making a case for being number 2 when the fall does roll around. And speaking of which, we talked to heard from Boaz Stanley earlier on this week with Chris's conversation with him. You guys got to see some centers working with some quarterbacks, and Boaz Stanley among them, R.J. Newsom and Marquis Anderson also snapping to the respective quarterbacks as well.
I think there are about 6 guys. If we want to go super in depth, I can give you the other ones.
Is our first instance at a depth chart?
No.
There's no correlation between 1s and 2s and 3s?
That's right. No correlation. They're just all in a line.
Okay.
Out there snapping. There's no other linemen, skill position players. It's literally a center snapping to a quarterback.
Okay.
You know, they do it a lot. But, yeah, you had, I mean, those were the scholarship guys that you had. You had Boaz Stanley, Marquis Anderson, R.J. Newsom out there. But you also had Chase Swigert and Mac Walters out there. So shout out to those guys. Chase Swigert out of Chapin.
Couple walk-ons. I will say, Chris, I think we have probably heard enough so far about Boaz to pretty comfortably say, I mean, I don't know how strong you want to go, that he's got a good shot to hold down the starting center spot. Like I think I think there's a lot of information that he's working with the ones right now. You know, and I think R.J. Newsom right now is kind of that guy. Maybe if they kicked off today, would be a little bit of like a swing guy for you that you know would have a great shot to be maybe that 6th guy, like next man up if somebody went down on the interior. Though you know Tree Babalade maybe has a say in that as well. But Boaz probably, and we've talked about this, man. Boaz to me is probably the guy who has already most exceeded expectations, just in terms, again, we're talking about what we've heard in spring ball and winter workouts and all that. It's still incredibly early, but there are some really good signs. It reminds me a little bit of us hearing early on last year, like, hey, Torricelli Simpkins is going to be really hard to keep off the field. I think Boaz, you can maybe say that same sentence. Boaz Stanley is going to be very hard to keep off the field this year for South Carolina.
And I think coming in, I do agree with that comparison on the situations. I think it was a little different, like during the portal recruiting process. I remember right after they got TS3 out of the portal, it was kind of like, hey, if this guy can win the starting center job, then blank, blank, blank. Well, he didn't end up winning the starting center job, but he did win a starting guard job. I think with Boaz, you know, you remember how quiet that one was, Wes? Like just kind of, he didn't know he's in the portal, came up, boom, it happens. I guess there weren't as many expectations there. And then we heard hey, this guy has been really kind of a pleasant surprise. And that does, obviously they took Boaz Stanley out of the portal. They liked him as a player. But I think you can draw a line between maybe even what was expected and what they've gotten so far. And so for him to come in, again, at a position or a spot that's been pretty competitive. Yes, there's an opening for starting center, probably even more so than one of the guard spots. I mean, that one's more open, but there's going to be a lot of competition there. And he's come in and kind of put his stamp on things. Good size, moves well, experienced player because he's already played JUCO ball. He's played at Troy. Once he had center experience when he moved back there at Troy because he played it, I think he played it in high school. He played it at junior college. He's played, I think, 3 out of the 5 spots in college on the offensive line. He's a sharp guy. He's an experienced guy. And from what we heard, he's been moving around pretty well. So he looks like, not that he's going to be the guy, but he's certainly put his stamp on it.
Somebody else that's mentioned here is Marquis Anderson, somebody we've heard a lot about, and somebody that does have that versatility of moving around from guard to center as well. And, again, injuries have kind of afflicted him for his time at South Carolina so far. And by all indications, he seems to be good to go 100% for this spring, right?
I mean, as far as we know, like it's I think I think the question there for Marquis has just been, can he get back to maybe what he was before? And I think you see this sometimes with guys. They'll be cleared. They'll be cleared to play, but are they able to play to the level they were before? And Marquis was someone. I mean, early on, we were hearing like, hey, among this freshman group, and this would have been the same group as Tree and Tro, this guy is most ready to play. That's what we heard his first spring here. And then it ends up being, he's banged up. He ends up having to sit out that first year, then was banged up last year as well. And Tree and Tro, as we know, both stepped in and played a lot as true freshmen. So for Marquis, I'm hopeful for him that at some point we start hearing, hey, like Marquis looks like his old self. Maybe that is this spring. Just in terms of mobility, like when he was 100% and coming in, this is a guy who, I mean, I don't even think it's an exaggeration to say like has strong NFL potential. Like in terms of being someone who can move but plays inside, is big enough to, there was even talk about him athletically playing some right tackle, and maybe he even did his first spring just because he was that easy of a mover at his size. And I think as somebody, if you're wanting to, do some power game stuff where you're kind of getting your guards out there on the edge and pulling them and stuff like that, Marquis can do those things and can get out on screens and block people, in space as well. Like he's that athletic. It's just a matter. You want to talk about a wild card? I mean, it's already and it's a good thing. It's already a pretty crowded O-line room right now in terms of just guys with ability. But man, I think Marquis getting back to his old self would be a wild card that could be disruptive to that competition.
Yeah, he's, just very talented coming out of high school. And I remember some of the first times we got to see him, I think this was his freshman year. He's out there like catching passes, goofing off, like with the tight ends before practice. Like, wow, this guy's really athletic. He's one of those guys that you looked at and you could say he could play 4 out of the 5 spots on the offensive line, maybe 5 of 5, probably any guard spot, right tackle, center, heck, maybe even left tackle. He's not 6'6", right? But just a kind of an easy mover. And so if he does stay healthy, he's one that I think has kind of been under the radar. Maybe he's not being counted on quite as much, but he still has a lot of future potential, and the emphasis right now, the focus seems to be a little bit more on, Nick Sharp. I think he's been working in with the ones. You've got R.J. Newsome, who Wes mentioned earlier. You've got Troball. You got Tree in there. Like, you have some options. You have a lot of competition, but maybe don't forget about Marquis Anderson in there. Maybe if not for this season, just the future, because still a really talented player who can move.
Yeah, and again, the offensive line, probably the most intriguing things to be following this offseason, and hopefully nets better results than it did a year ago, and can do a good job protecting lower sellers as the season does roll along. You got to speak with Nick Sharp, by the way, on the Gamecock Club Hour in the last hour there, and like you said, he's somebody that comes in with a good deal of experience from Wake Forest, factoring into competing for one of those guard spots. And again, you have a lot of guys in this room, either with experience at South Carolina or experience elsewhere, that is going to make this ongoing competition battle very interesting to see how they end up netting out the starting 5 when the season rolls around.
Nick is a big kid. He's played, he's one of the guys that has played power 4 ball. He's been at Wake Forest. So he's played, they played Ole Miss, last season, I think that was. He's played Clemson, I think, every year. He's played against some pretty high-level competition. So, talking to him, he wanted to enter the portal to, take his game to the next level, and felt like South Carolina was a good fit to do that. And when he came in, I think the question was, we knew he would be an interior offensive lineman. You didn't hear any tackle with him. It's going to be guard. It's going to be center. Which one would it be? And it seems like, just from what we've seen, what we've heard behind the scenes, even listening to Mike Shula the other day, seems like he's more in that mix at guard. And I caught a glimpse today specifically. It looks like he might be working some of both, right? But I know he's been working some left guard. A big kid who, again, is battle tested. He's played against good competition for several years. He's put some good stuff on tape. So I think very much that we're going to continue to see some rotation at those guard spots because you have several guys in there in the mix vying for snaps, vying for the starting job. Whoever kind of quote-unquote wins those spots coming out of the spring, may not be totally safe. I think they're going to continue keeping the competition going. And I think they would love to have what they had last season, which was some stability, some continuity in there.
Yep.
But Nick's a guy that is certainly going to be in the mix and has been.
Loop back around to what some of the coaches had to say the other day when speaking to the media as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, rolls on your Thursday here in the game.
All right, guys, you know it. This show brought to you by our friends over at Firehouse Subs. Great time to go ahead and order your lunch now at firehousesubs.com or with the Firehouse Subs app. Hopefully, you already got it. Hit that Rapid Rescue to go. You're going to get points every single time you order. Of course, if you're like us, you already have your favorites, but maybe you want to try something new. Right now, they are definitely pushing this zesty garlic hook and ladder. And, of course, we've told you about it, the spicy dill hook and ladder. We've both tried it from Hot Ones. If you aren't into the hot sauce or just hot things in general, the zesty garlic hook and ladder may be more for you. It does have a little bit of hot sauce on there, but much more mild than the Last Dab Reaper Edition sauce with the dill pickle just soaked in. I don't know the pickles. Is that a dill pickle?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Soaked in it. Try it right now from Hot Ones. Firehouse Subs, firehousesubs.com.
It's just I get to work on a lot of. I'm in a lot of coverages, and that's one of my main thing that I was trying to get better at. So just working at it more and more. So now I can just add that to my play style. If I get moved to safety in the next level, or if I have to stay at nickel, so just that helped me work on my coverage skills more.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris along with you on your Thursday. That was Jalen Kilgore yesterday talking to the media about his comfort level at playing at the nickel spot in the secondary, which is something that he's been doing for his past couple of years here at South Carolina, and something that he's done pretty well. And going back a little bit earlier on this week, before we kind of dive into what Kilgore had to say there, I want to also loop in what Torian Gray had to say about Jalen Kilgore and his fit at that spot of playing nickel within the defense.
I tell you what, if you move Jalen to safety, man, he's pretty good at nickel. It takes kind of a unique guy to be able to do the things that Jalen can do from the nickel spot. He's a big body, he's a safety body type that can cover, that can intercept the ball, make turnovers. He stout on the perimeter in the run game, so he's just such a unique player in that spot. And hell, Jalen's a hell of a football player. He'd be a hell of a safety too. But for our defense, Jalen likes the nickel position. We like him at that nickel position. So we're gonna see if our safety position can play itself out and keep Jalen at nickel.
Let's go back to 2023. The nickel spot was something that was a consistent storyline for this team, trying to figure out the right fit there, eventually settling on Jalen Kilgore as the season went along. And it's a hard spot to play because you do have to be in coverage on those slot guys, which not every safety or not every DB has the ability to do that.
Well, the other side is you can't just put a nickel or put a cornerback there to get the coverage aspects, because in today's world, you very rarely play a true 4-3. So you're kind of asking that nickel in run support to be almost like a Sam linebacker and be able to hold up and, run the alley or set the edge. And I think it's a situation where you notice what he said was that he's got a safety body, but he can also cover. And that's really what you're looking for from that spot in general. Now, you see some teams be a little bit more like, hey, we'll put our bigger guy there on early downs, or maybe put more of a true slot corner there in later downs. I think what Jalen allows you to do is just play the same guy there and not have to mix and match in terms of down, distance, and kind of opponent matchup. But the thing I keep going back to, though, too, and he even said it as well, if your safety position can sort itself out, because it does you no good to have all this talent at corner and nickel if your safety position does not sort itself out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, all things being equal, you want to keep Jalen there. For all the talk about all the experience this team's lost, which is substantial from last season, nobody on this defense played more than Jalen Kilgore last year. Played 796 snaps. That's more than, DQ Smith's also back, but that's more than Eamon Worry, more than Fortune, more than Debo, Knight, Kennard, anybody. And he played at nickel, and he played very well. It's a luxury to have a guy back that has that skill set, that can do the things you want him to do in the defense, that has gone out and had to cover Luther Burden, and had to cover Antonio Williams from Clemson and all these good slot receivers. Evan Stewart from A&M a couple years ago, who's now at Oregon. He's had to go out there and do those things, and he's played a lot of ball for you and played well. And so when you're looking at it, when you're trying to find your best five, which is, of course, the goal, you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. You don't want to say, well, we got a hole at safety. Jalen can play safety. Let's put him there. Is somebody else going to be able to give you, close to what you can get from Jalen at nickel? And maybe not, right? Now, you do have to feel good, as you said, Wes, and as Torian said, you have to feel good about that other safety spot. You can't walk away saying, man, we've got this massive void here. You have some other guys that are going to be in the mix there, too. You've got Peyton Williams is probably first man up, right? Because he is the guy who would spell Nick Eamon-Worry at times. He's not going to be like Nick Eamon-Worry because there's not anybody on the roster. There's not anybody in the country like Nick Eamon-Worry at any school. Well, I think we've all, if you didn't know that before, we learned that at the NFL Combine. So there is a process of trying to get to the best 5, but it seems like the staff would really, really like, if they can, to leave Kilgore there. And that's a perfectly reasonable take, because if you can prevent moving a guy who's really found a home at a spot and has played for you well, why move him?
Yeah. And again, you look at somebody like a Brandon Cisse that's been talked about, somebody that could possibly fit that role as well. But again, this is something that you have spring practice for, to kind of figure these things out before the season does end up getting here. And, I go back to, I think it's something that Clayton White talked about earlier on this week, where, it is hard to replace Neiman Ori. It's hard to replace a, Kyle Kennard. And it may not just be one guy that's going to step up and do that job exactly, but the depth that you have and your collection of talent within those respective rooms are probably going to have to kind of come together and replace that production themselves, which is ideally kind of what you're shooting for. And if somebody emerges as that next dominant guy, that's great. We can't count on that happening.
Yeah, and I think part of Clayton's point, too, was you have to just go back to playing regular football, which I believe you can translate to mean that, all right, you have to actually kind of treat that safety spot like it's a safety, not like you have a unicorn there where you could just sort of maybe do some different things that most defensive coordinators are not able to do. That was a huge luxury to have Nick, to put him in some certain man coverage situations. Even if he's playing safety, he could come up and do some different things for you in terms of that. But, I think the addition of Cisse to this roster is the thing that ultimately, to me, gives you the potential of making that move. If Cisse is who we think he is, now in that case, let's say you kind of play this thing out. If he is who we think he is, then you still have to get a Vakari Swain back in the mix, who, as we know, has not been out there at spring practice, academic issue. And then Miles Norwood has to be who you think he is as well. Like, all those things have to kind of play out like that in order to then have, because then you have Cisse at nickel. You obviously have Judge Collier, but you have to feel great about that other nickel spot too in order to make that move, I think. So, what about Jalewis Solomon? Can he make a jump? He's played both nickel and some corner for you. I watched him move around a little bit today. Solomon, just frame-wise, actually looks to me more like a Torian Gray corner, kind of long, tall, but a little bit more slender than a Kilgore, who looks more obviously like a nickel safety type in what kind of the way we see Torian Gray structure everything.
And I think that's why we're all talking about Jalen more of a potential move to safety, because when you're assessing the situation and the whole best 5 thing, you go, man, it seems like, at least on paper, they've got more options across the nickel corner spots. And I mean, Wes, you just laid out the names there. They really do on paper. And I would say you kind of go beyond on paper, right? You've got Judge coming back. If Vakari gets back as expected, he's played in 16 games over his career. He made a step forward last season, particularly back half of 2024. You have some guys there. You seem to have less options at safety, then combined it with this glaring hole. But that doesn't mean you have no options, right? You've got some guys who could plug in there. So will be fascinating ultimately to see, how this thing plays out. I think there's a lot left. There's a lot of ball left to play, not just in the spring, and there's more time. Carolina's not playing next week.
Yep.
They're playing later this year.
We'll get into more of what the players had to say yesterday. I want to hit some cuts from Mazio Bennett yesterday, because I thought he gave some really good insight, not only to his individual wide receiver play, but also the room as a whole, as, again, it's one of the biggest questions we have going through this offseason. That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, here on your Thursday on The Game.
just my all-around game. I feel like I came in as a very polished route runner, but it ain't just route running when you get to college. You know what I'm saying? Everybody can run good routes, but it's about doing the things, the small things that go into running routes, like quick twitch speed, you feel what I'm saying? Stuff like that, just getting faster all around, being more explosive, you know what I'm saying? Just small stuff like that I feel like my freshman year I didn't really get to showcase as much as I would want to, so I'm definitely focusing on that this year.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you. Here on your Thursday, that was the voice of Mazio Bennett, who's entering his second year as a wide receiver here at South Carolina. Obviously came in and made a pretty significant impact in year number one in that room, but that's him talking yesterday to the media, and pretty insightful, about 5 minutes if you can go and listen to the whole conversation about, the technical side of playing wide receiver. And this kind of loops into what we were talking about yesterday with Nick Harbor. And again, like Mazio Bennett said, it's not just about route running. There's so many small, nuanced things that you have to perfect to be really good, especially at this level of playing that position. Even somebody that's been playing this position for years and years and years, is still trying to fine-tune and make himself better with.
Yeah, and was already, honestly, for a true freshman, a pretty highly technical route runner, in my opinion, and already a guy that had some understanding of the nuance of playing receiver, just what it means to kind of shape your route based on what you're seeing from the leverage of your opponent, based on what you're seeing from the particular defense you're facing. And, Artie was a guy who I think understood some of those things, but I thought it was kind of interesting listening to Mike Furry talk about Mazio as well, and just saying, hey, there's not a guy in that room who has reshaped his body more than Mazio, and just some of the things he's now able to do, if I was interpreting correctly from Furry, was just like being able to run routes at full speed a little bit more, being able to kind of break routes off a little bit more, just in terms of physically doing some of the things that would have been a little bit more difficult the year before. I think my broader takeaway, too, for that room, there's going to be a lot of buzz about these true freshmen, rightfully so. But you notice that Furry even threw Dre Jacobs' name in there as well, as a guy that just he said, hey, man, he's super talented. He's just trying to get more consistent. So if you look at kind of that trio first with Nick, Jared Brown, and Mazio, but then let's throw Vandrevius Jacobs in there too. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of talk about these freshmen, but I think those returning guys probably are looking at those freshmen and saying, nah, man, like I'm not going to make this easy on you. I still have a role here, and I think are still that first trio I mentioned is probably still your favorites to be the starters.
That they are, and I go back to the point we've been talking about all spring, heading into spring, and since it started, and that is that the presence of the freshmen. Now look, Jared Brown, Jacobs, Mazio, Nick Harbor, like, from what we know of those guys, they are self-starters, right? But it has not hurt that this very highly touted freshman class, which is going to grow by one when Donovan Murph gets on campus this summer, he's going to have something to say about all this too. That has helped, right? And you look at the offseason from, December to January, really, I think it all happened in December. Carolina had, 4 receivers transfer out. Then you bring in some really good freshman class. You did have it in the back of your mind that Carolina was going after potentially some receivers in the last portal window. They probably won't this spring, but they kicked the tires on some guys. And so just knowing all that, like, you could get a sense if you're in that room, right, there's going to be some competition here. And so for those freshmen coming in, Wes, they knew, hey, these guys who are already on the roster, like Mazio and Nick and Jared Brown, Dre Jacobs, they're not going to give it up easy either. So that competition, I think, has really, really helped everyone. And I think it helps that they've seemed to recruit a bunch of guys who want to get better. You never doubt that about Mazio Bennett. We've talked a lot about Nick Harbor and how he's trying to improve himself. Jared Brown's been mentioned pretty consistently in terms of trying to take his game to the next level. We've heard a lot, and Furry talked about it the other day, these freshmen, they have come in with the right mindset too.
Well, and that's something Furry alluded to the other day. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but the question was asked, hey, why didn't you go out and get somebody in the transfer portal? And again, you're looking at guys, there's certainly options out there, but not to the degree that they thought was going to be able to come in and make the type of improvement that they need or come up and compete the way that they needed to, which, again, you obviously had some guys in there that showed some production last year and had these freshmen coming in that are highly touted as well. So it feels like they're pretty comfortable with what they have in the room right now.
Yeah, and I think if the right fit came along after the spring, would you consider that again? Yeah, probably so. But I think there's a lot of excitement. I mean, you could tell just listening to Furry talk about these guys. There's some genuine excitement. Like that was not coach speak. That was a guy who I think, for one thing, is just confident in his ability to get the most out of this group. But two, is looking around, talking about traits and saying, look at this group. Like I've got some guys to work with. And, frankly, it's just I think a much better overall situation with that position than it was this time last year where, I mean, ultimately, guys, you brought in 5 transfers at wide receiver last year. Like, that's not where you want to be at a position. You want to be bringing in transfers to, potentially help you, but not to have to completely rebuild a room. And that's where they were last year. This year, obviously, you brought in that huge class of high school guys, but you have some returning players who can hold down the fort and are going to be pushed by the young guys.
You guys will not be out there tomorrow, so we'll see you guys at the beginning of next week. But before I let you go, how many SEC teams in the Final Four? 7 in the Sweet 16.
In the Final Four?
In the Final Four.
2.
2? Chris?
Running out of time.
I had St. John's.
How many SEC teams in the Final Four?
2.
2. All right. Halftime show coming up next here on the game.